In a small, run-down neighborhood where cracked sidewalks led to rusty chain-link fences and faded laundry fluttered like flags of survival, a young boy named Tommy spent his days dreaming of a better life. His world was one of peeling wallpaper, flickering streetlights, and the hollow ache of an empty stomach. While other kids raced bikes or played ball, Tommy scavenged for scraps, his tattered backpack slung over bony shoulders. But fate had other plans for him, plans that began with a whimper in the shadows. One gray afternoon, as Tommy rummaged through a dumpster behind the corner store, he heard a whine, soft, desperate, and unmistakably alive. Buried under soggy cardboard was a trembling golden retriever, its fur matted and paws raw. A glint of gold caught Tommy's eye, a collar engraved with a single name, Buddy. The dog's eyes met his, and in that moment, Tommy forgot his hunger. He scooped the shivering animal into his arms, whispering, "It's okay. I got you." But Tommy didn't know this dog carried a secret, one that would unravel a billionaire's grief, rewrite his own destiny, and prove that miracles hide in the unlikeliest of places. This is the story of a boy, a dog, and the chain reaction of kindness that would change their lives forever. Tommy found the dog shivering in an alley, its golden fur caked in mud and a rusty chain dangling from its neck. The afternoon sun caught the edge of its collar, revealing a faint engraving. Buddy. The dog whimpered, its eyes pleading, and Tommy's heart clenched. He knew what hunger looked like. He saw it in the mirror every day, but he couldn't walk away. Ignoring the growl of his own empty stomach, Tommy scooped the dog into his arms. "It's okay, buddy," he whispered. "I've got you." He smuggled the dog into his cramped apartment, hiding him under his threadbare jacket. But his mother noticed immediately. "Tommy," she snapped, "we can barely feed ourselves. We don't need a dog." Tommy pleaded, promising to take extra shifts collecting cans. Reluctantly, his mother agreed, but only for a week. "After that it goes," she said. Tommy nodded, determined to find Buddy's owner. He spent nights sketching lost dog posters, his hands trembling from exhaustion. By day, he plastered them on lampposts, knocked on doors, and asked shopkeepers. But no one recognized Buddy. Days turned into nights, and Tommy's hope began to fade. He shared his meager meals with Buddy, half a sandwich here, a stolen apple there. The dog became his shadow, sleeping curled at the foot of his bed, tail thumping whenever Tommy smiled. For the first time, Tommy didn't feel alone, but time was running out. On the 7th night, Tommy's mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Tomorrow," she said, "the dog goes." Tommy hugged Buddy tightly, tears soaking the dog's fur. "I'll find your family," he whispered. "I promise." The next morning, Tommy made one last desperate attempt. He took Buddy to the busiest park in the city, praying someone would recognize him. But as hours passed and the sky darkened, Tommy's hope shattered. He knelt in the grass, burying his face in Buddy's neck. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I tried." Just then, a black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. A man in a tailored suit leaped out, his face pale with panic. "Buddy!" he shouted. The dog's ears perked up, and he bounded toward the man, barking joyfully. Tommy froze. The man dropped to his knees, hugging Buddy as if he'd found treasure. And in that moment, Tommy realized, Buddy wasn't just a lost dog. He was a missing piece of someone else's world. When Tommy finally tracked down the owner, he stood frozen outside a towering mansion, clutching Buddy's leash. His worn sneakers sank into the pristine lawn, and his heart raced as a butler ushered him inside. In the grand foyer, a man in a tailored suit turned around, and Tommy's breath caught. He recognized him instantly from the news. This wasn't just any person. He was Alexander Grant, one of the wealthiest billionaires in the world. And the dog Tommy had saved? It was Grant's beloved companion, who had been missing for weeks. Grant's stern expression melted the moment he saw Buddy. He dropped to his knees, his voice breaking. "Buddy, you're alive." The dog bounded into his arms, tail wagging furiously. Tears streamed down the billionaire's face as he buried his hands in Buddy's fur. "I thought I'd lost you forever," he whispered. For a moment, the room was silent, except for Buddy's joyful whimpers. Then Grant looked up at Tommy, his gaze piercing. "You did this?" he asked, voice trembling. Tommy nodded, suddenly aware of his frayed sleeves and dirt-stained jeans. I just wanted to help him," he stammered. Grant stood slowly, studying Tommy's face. "Do you know how long I've searched?" he said. "Private jets, detectives, rewards, nothing worked. And yet, here you are, a boy from the streets, bringing him home." Tommy shifted nervously, expecting gratitude but unsure of what came next. Then Grant did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. "Name your price," he said. "Whatever you want. It's yours." Tommy's eyes widened. He could ask for enough to feed his family for years, to fix their crumbling apartment, to buy his mom the medicine she needed. But his voice stuck in his throat. Grant frowned. "You don't want money?" Tommy shook his head. "I just wanted Buddy to be safe," he said quietly. The billionaire stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Then, slowly, he tore up the check. "You're different, aren't you?" he said almost to himself. "Most people would have sold him for a reward, but you brought him back because it was right." Before Tommy could reply, Grant turned to his assistant. "Cancel my meetings," he said. "We're taking Tommy home." The boy's heart sank. Home? Back to the alleyways and hunger? But Grant placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not that home," he said. "Your new home." That night, Tommy sat in a limousine, clutching Buddy's paw as they drove through the city. Grant explained everything: how Buddy had been his only family after losing his wife, how the dog's disappearance had shattered him. "You didn't just save Buddy," he said. "You saved me." And then came the words that would change Tommy's life forever. "I'm going to make sure you never have to struggle again," Grant said. "School, a safe place to live, opportunities, whatever you need. Consider it a thank you. From both of us." Buddy barked in agreement, as if he understood every word. As they pulled up to Tommy's neighborhood, Grant saw the cracked sidewalks and boarded-up windows. His jaw tightened. "This ends now," he muttered. The next day, construction crews arrived, and Tommy's world began to transform. But the real miracle wasn't the money or the promises. It was the look in his mother's eyes when she realized her son's kindness had finally been rewarded. Moved by Tommy's selflessness, Alexander Grant didn't just thank him. He offered to change his life. From that day forward, Tommy's future was secure. But this wasn't just about money. It was about rewriting a story that had always been written in hardship. Within weeks, construction crews arrived in Tommy's neighborhood, replacing cracked sidewalks with playgrounds and boarded-up buildings with community centers. And at the heart of it all stood Tommy's family, in a cozy, sunlit home with a backyard where Buddy could finally run free. Tommy's mother wept as she unpacked boxes in their new kitchen, her hands no longer raw from scrubbing floors. His father, a man who'd worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, now had a steady position at one of Grant's companies, his shoulders lighter than they'd been in years. And Tommy? He sat at a desk in a private school, his textbooks crisp and new, his mind buzzing with possibilities he'd never dared to imagine. Alexander Grant became more than a benefactor, he became a mentor. Weekends were spent in Grant's library, where Tommy devoured books on engineering, astronomy, and art. "You've got a gift," Grant told him one afternoon, watching Tommy sketch a design for a solar-powered car. "And I'm going to make sure the world sees it." But the greatest change wasn't in their bank account or their address. It was in the quiet moments, the smell of his mother's homemade bread wafting through the house, the sound of his father's laughter at the dinner table, the way Buddy slept at the foot of Tommy's bed, safe and loved. For the first time, Tommy didn't dream of escaping his life. He dreamed of building it. Years later, at his high school graduation, Tommy stood before a crowd of classmates and teachers, his voice steady and proud. "People say I saved Buddy," he said, "but the truth is, he saved me. And Mr. Grant didn't just change my life, he showed me that kindness is a chain reaction. Today, I'm starting a scholarship in his name, because every kid deserves a chance to turn their what if into what's next." In the front row, Alexander Grant wiped away a tear, Buddy's tail thumping softly beside him. The boy who'd once scrounged for scraps in alleyways was now a young man with a heart as vast as the future ahead of him. And as Tommy tossed his cap into the air, he knew this was only the beginning. Because sometimes, the universe sends us a stray dog to remind us that even in the darkest corners, miracles are waiting to be found, and the bravest thing we can do is reach out a hand. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can lead to the biggest miracles. Tommy's story reminds us that no matter how hard life may seem, there's always hope, and sometimes it comes with a wagging tail. From the cold, forgotten alley where he found Buddy to the warmth of a life rebuilt, Tommy's journey began with a single choice: to care for a creature in need, even when he had nothing left to give. Today, Tommy's world is unrecognizable. Where there was once hunger, there's now abundance. Where there was loneliness, there's family, both the one he was born into and the one he found in Alexander Grant. Buddy, now sleek and happy, still sleeps at the foot of Tommy's bed, a living reminder that love and loyalty transcend wealth or status. But the true miracle isn't the money, the scholarships, or the new home. It's the proof that kindness ripples outward, touching lives in ways we can't foresee. Tommy's courage to help a lost dog didn't just change his fate. It reignited hope in a grieving man, united a community, and showed the world that heroes come in all shapes and sizes. So the next time you see someone, or something, in need, remember Tommy and Buddy. Remember that every act of compassion, no matter how small, plants a seed for miracles to grow. After all, the brightest futures often begin in the darkest corners. And sometimes, all it takes is a little faith, a lot of heart, and a loyal friend by your side.